Still working. Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Sheridan here. Thursday, April 12th. We,
It's start- yep.
huh?
Starting on YouTube. You're live.
What about Periscope?
I don't know yet.
All right, I'm hanging up.
Okay, bye.
So, we're doing some technical improvements here at Jordan Sheridan Reports. So, thanks for bearing with us as we figure it all out. We're trying to go live in multiple places, and unfortunately, we don't exactly have a full-time tech person to deal with all these things. So it's been a little bit of a adventure. But I hope everyone's having a lovely day. By popular demand, I am not going to be urging you. I am not going to be urging you to sign up for my Patreon during the broadcast because it's right here. And by the way, I worked very, very hard to make this sign here. I worked very, very hard to make this sign. I made about 4 or 5 of them, but it wasn't showing up properly and my handwriting is terrible. But if you could read that, it says patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. So that's where you could support me. We have video diaries up. We're putting my latest podcast up today. And it's going to be a lot of other exciting things there. How many people are signed up on the Patreon right now? Let's take a look. Show you what we're dealing with here. We have, wow, we're moving up, baby. We got 212 people signed up, $1,109 pledged. We're trying to get that number up, obviously, because that's the funds that I need to get out in the field and hire other reporters. So your contributions, your support are very, very, very appreciated. So thanks so much. We are also working to cover the Flint water crisis. If you aren't aware, there's been the water pods have been shut down in Flint. The free water pods have been shut down in Flint because the governor of Michigan is essentially telling the residents the water is restored. That's not true. That's not true. And press the share button. Let's get this out to as many people as possible. YouTube is doing its very best to make sure independent journalists, our feeds are not being seen by the masses. Jimmy Dore did a great video on this where you could subscribe to a channel, and just because you subscribe doesn't actually mean YouTube is going to deliver the videos to your channel. You have to subscribe. You also have to click on the bell, the notification bell next to subscriber, just to guarantee you're going to get the videos delivered to you. And even that doesn't guarantee it. So a lot of interesting things. I might do a video on this at a later date, because YouTube actually acknowledged that they don't actually deliver the videos for all subscribers because they don't want to spam. They don't want to spam subscribers. Why the fuck would you be spamming somebody? If they click subscribe, they want the videos. I mean, it's this crazy, they're attempting to make it look like they're doing this for their subscribers. No. They're doing it for their corporate advertisers. They don't want independent journalists. They don't want anti-establishment voices on their platform anymore. Well, I'm going to stay here. And I'm going to be on Twitter, on Periscope Live. I'm going to be on Facebook Live when I can figure out how to do Facebook and YouTube and Periscope at the same time. But there's a lot to discuss, and I'm going to start with the Flint water crisis. On Friday, the governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, who has never been held accountable for his role in the poisoning of Flint residents, he declared that he's going to end the water pods, saying that the water is now restored in Flint. The water is restored. I did a live stream that night. It's up on this channel, explaining why the water is not restored. I have been working on a piece. It's been very difficult to get that piece published, if I'm being honest, because corporate media editors are the most lazy motherfuckers you'll ever meet. My business partner, Jen, could actually put in the chat room, she could explain to you the reasons we've been getting for them not publishing the piece, which essentially start with, I'm lazy. I don't want to actually make the effort to read this piece that could potentially save lives. I don't have the bandwidth I don't have the bandwidth for this. Hi, London. Somebody said hi from London. There's very few outlets that actually read the piece I sent and told me, oh, no, it's not enough here. The majority of the outlets have basically said, oh, no, we don't want to read it. We're too lazy. Because who the hell cares about poor people's lives that have been poisoned, right? So the governor officially closed down the water pods, and this was the site at the Capitol in Lansing yesterday, where about 50 residents went to the Capitol. Why would it work when I press play, right? Hold on.
In Old San Juan has stood strong for over 400
Listen to
years.
this corporate ad.
Yes, it's open and ready to enchant you. If you're wondering, are we ready? We're ready.
I'm ready.
Salud.
I'm ready, Puerto Rico.
It's open and ready to enchant you. If you're wondering,
the ralliers made their way indoors where they held their fists high and walked in silence. A quiet walk through the Capitol building, 2 busloads of Flint residents eager to walk into the House chamber and, if there was any question, make their demands known.
We listened in, we waited, and then we said, do your job, open the pods. We let a few chants, and then we came out.
One man taken away by police and later released. The group continued chanting as they left the Capitol.
We're letting them know that despite the fact that it's 4 years into this lead crisis, it is still a crisis. We are still afraid about the contents in our water.
So what can lawmakers do about it?
The legislature can only allocate money and resources to provide those dollars and cents it's going to cost to keep those bottled water facilities open inside the city of Flint. But the governor has total autonomy as it relates to services that's going to be provided for a community such as Flint.
More chants continued outside after a long day of rallying.
Today's rally went well, but I want to see more from the Michigan State. I want to see a lot of our other brothers and sisters stand with us in solidarity and unity, because this isn't just a Flint issue. This is when the state put profit over people.
In Lansing, Elise Ramey, ABC 12 News.
So there you have it. You have about 50 residents, I believe it was, went in about 2 buses from Flint to Lansing. Lansing is the capital of Michigan. And really, they were in the House session, the Michigan State Legislature, saying, no Nestle, water for Flint. No Nestle, water for Flint. Because the governor and the state of Michigan basically decided to let Nestle extract more water from Flint for basically, not Flint, Michigan, from fresh water bodies. Nestle is allowed to extract, I believe it's 400 gallons a minute. 400 gallons a minute. So they're letting Nestle do that for basically no money, but they're closing down the water pods. And the water pods are, this is life or death. Flint is 45% poverty level. 45% poverty level. So the majority cannot afford to go to Walmart or 7-Eleven or whatever and buy cartons and cartons of bottled water themselves. They were depending on the state. And when the governor of Michigan declares that the water is restored, well, if you've been following my reporting the last few days, I posted on Twitter, I posted everywhere. There are people in Flint posting videos where they take water from their sinks and it's brown. Not 3 years ago, 3 days ago. Yet the governor of Michigan is declaring the water restored. And the corporate media, like the fine lady I just played, they don't actually investigate anything. They don't investigate. You know what they do? They just regurgitate what the government tells them. I did a video explaining in detail why the reporting I have done shows that the science that is being used to declare the water restored and normal is highly, highly questionable. Highly questionable. They have only, on the federal level, they have only examined 34 homes. 34 homes they examined to satisfy the EPA's lead and copper rule. And my reporting shows I don't even know if they did follow the EPA's lead and copper rule, because they did nothing to actually confirm whether the homes they were testing were actually connected to lead service lines. According to the EPA's lead and copper rule, you have to verify that you are testing homes. Half of the sample size need to be, at least half of the sample size, 50%, need to be homes connected to lead service lines, or the remaining half need to have lead pipes or copper pipes with lead solder. They didn't verify any of that. The federally funded EPA scientists barely followed regulations. And the state used plumbers, I think, for 200 homes to verify, and then the rest they didn't. You have brown water still coming out of people's pipes. Brown water still coming out of people's sink. Yet the governor has decided to shut down the water pods, claiming the people don't need it anymore because they could drink the water. And you know what's going to happen? Because Flint is 45% impoverished, Brandy says, Jordan, you are the only one I've heard cover water poisoning. Thank you. Brandy, I'm doing my best. There are some folks on the ground in Flint, more citizen activist journalists that are covering this, but this is very important. And honestly, I really want to get back in the field. I want to get back in the field with a cameraman and equipment to keep the spotlight on Flint. So, that's all I got to say. All I got to say. The bottom line is this. The governor is lying to the people. And it's not the first time he has lied to the people. He actually perjured himself in front of Congress. It came out that he actually knew about the Flint water crisis. He actually knew about the Legionella risk well before he actually said he did. He said that in front of Congress. No accountability. No, that's fine. When a governor lies, who cares, right? And press the share button. Let's get this out. So as the governor ends free water for impoverished, poor people, predominantly African-American, a lot of poor white people too. I'm going to get to Syria. Don't worry, folks. I just want to give you a little reminder on this governor. This is the governor's priorities. He's closing the water pods for impoverished, poisoned people of Flint when the water is not yet safe. Well, he sure didn't have a problem giving massive tax breaks. Michigan governor to cut taxes for corporations while cutting services for the poor and the middle class. This piece is from 2011, so right when he became governor. It looks like Rick Snyder, the Republican governor of Michigan, whose legislation will give, quote, emergency managers carte blanche over Michigan municipalities in the event of, quote, a financial crisis, is lowering taxes on business by raising taxes on the poor and working class. What a humanitarian. Governor Rick Snyder has proposed ending his state's earned income tax credit, cutting a $600 per child tax credit, and reducing credits for seniors, while also cutting funding for school districts by 8 to 10%. At the same time, as the Michigan League for Human Services found, the state's business taxes would be reduced by nearly $2 billion, or 86%. Snyder wants to cut business taxes by 86%, lowering revenue from those taxes from $2.1 billion to approximately $293 million, a drop of $1.8 billion, all during a recession that has Michigan, like so many other states, strapped for cash. To close that gap, personal income taxes would go up from $5.75 billion to $7.5 billion, and the rates on the lowest earners would go up more than rates of the top 1%. So there you see, like Paul Ryan, who the media just gave adoration in his retirement announcement. The media showered Paul Ryan with affection and love. He's such a good family man. He's such a humane public servant. No. Like Paul Ryan, Governor Rick Snyder is a social Darwinist plutocrat who values rich plutocrats and oil executives and yacht owners and bankers more than poor, poisoned people in Flint. Thank you, Laura, for signing up for both Patreon accounts. Mwah! We need more people to do that. Oh, by the way, I have podcasts up at the Patreon. I have video diaries up, and there's going to be a video that goes up, I think, tonight that a lot of you are going to like. Not on my Patreon, somewhere else. So, Flint Mayor Karen Weaver, basically, sources tell me before Governor Snyder announced this, that he was closing down the pods, the mayor tried to object and tried to convince the governor against closing down the pods. And now Governor Snyder has agreed to meet with the mayor on the closing of the water pods. Governor Snyder has agreed to meet with Mayor Karen Weaver next week, giving her the chance to make the case for resupplying the city with no-cost bottled water in person. A spokesperson for Snyder on Wednesday, April 11th, confirmed the meeting has been scheduled, which Weaver requested Monday, April 9th, after the State Department of Environmental Quality announced it would discontinue payments for water distribution here. So I just want to point out, at a certain point, we need to call the government officials that are doing this by their real names. These are sociopaths. When you have a governor who, by the way, his gross negligence and I think involuntary manslaughter was very largely responsible for the poisoning of the Flint citizens, a governor whose priorities are to give massive tax breaks to corporations and wealthy donors that do not need it, but can't find the money to continue supplying poor, poisoned Americans that he was responsible. Maybe he didn't poison them, but he certainly was responsible for the aftermath. It's more important to this man to basically lick his donor and corporations' anuses. Excuse my French. Than to actually take care of the people you poisoned. What kind of country is that? I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, whatever. First of all, let's say for argument's sake that the water was now safe to drink. It's not, but let's just say for argument's sake it was. Don't you think that until all those lead service lines in the street are replaced, all those lead service lines that were destroyed by the corrosive Flint River that your state agency, Governor Snyder, didn't treat properly with anti-corrosive chemicals, don't you think until all those lead service lines are replaced that you should continue to supply bottled water for free to the residents? Don't you think that the government should actually be covering the health care of these poisoned poor people? Because they're not. I just interviewed Melissa Mays, one of the leading Flint activists. She's a resident. She was here in New York. I interviewed her the other day. You could watch it on this channel. Nobody's paying for her and her family's mountains of medical bills. Same goes for all the other residents I've interviewed in Flint. This is a national disgrace. Honestly, I don't even think they treat people in third world countries this way. Can you imagine? Let me tell you something. I got a very, very good deal. I live on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. If what happened in Flint happened here, we wouldn't have water pods that we have to go to around the city because they'd be delivering them door to door. You want to know why? Because this is a fairly, upper middle class area. Middle class to upper middle class. They'd be delivering the water door to door. But for a poor city, by the way, I'd say 16 to 20% of the residents of Flint do not have public transportation. So they don't even have a way, Even if they could afford it, they don't even have a way, really. I mean, they don't have cars. So this is a disgrace. It's a disgrace that the mayor of Flint has to lobby this sociopath governor to keep the water coming for poisoned people. And you know what's even more of a disgrace? And I talked about this at length in my Beat the Press podcast, which you could find at, I talked about that at length today. There is zero national media attention on what is going on in Flint right now. Do you know that they shut down highways in Flint yesterday? Some of the protesters? Did you know, if I didn't just show you that they had interrupted a legislative session? I bet you didn't. Thank you, Nicholas. I made the sign myself. It took me a while. I have terrible handwriting. We're doing this kind of, raw style. The media revolution painted in arts and crafts. It's disgusting. CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and the Washington Post, they're all like drooling and warmongering. I just interviewed Rania Khalek, who is a Middle East journalist. I interviewed her. It went up this morning. Go watch that interview. I think it was like a half-hour podcast. She is an expert on Syria and all things. As the media just warmongers with zero evidence. They're saying now, the U.S. officials have confirmed chemical weapons in Syria. Have they confirmed that it was Bashar al-Assad who did it? But anyway, they're warmongering for another war because they can't get enough of war, but they can't be bothered to cover that humanitarian aid to American citizens. You want to talk about humanitarian aid to Syria? How about a humanitarian aid to the citizens of America, poor people in Flint? But we don't want to cover that. We can't be bothered that the sociopath governor in Michigan just shut down the free water pods. We can't be bothered with that. We can't be bothered that poor black people, poor white people, as we speak right now, are all sorts of scared, all sorts of desperate. They had lines of cars wrapped around for blocks as people tried to get in for the last cases of free water. Most of these people don't have the money to go and buy stacks and stacks of bottled water at the grocery store. So they're going to have no choice but to drink from the tap. And that tap, they say, oh, it's fine, they have filters. No. It has been shown that those filters go bad very quickly. It has been shown that those filters actually breed bacteria. It has been shown that those filters do not stop all lead from coming through. And now this sociopath governor and the corporate media who is covering for him, not covering it, but covering it up, are basically saying to the poor people of Flint, good luck. We poisoned you. Figure it out. Oliver Quinn, which is worse, people with poor access to water in Flint, Michigan, or Puerto Rico residents moving to Miami to escape the hellscape? I don't think really, why should we choose? They're both awful. I mean, if you want to put a gun to my head, Flint has been going on now almost for 4 years. Almost for 4 years. It's a disgrace. I don't want to hear about our democracy under attack from Russia. No. Our democracy is under attack from Rick Snyder. Our democracy is under attack from a corrupt corporate media that doesn't cover real news. That's what our democracy is under attack. Fired up today. Our democracy is under attack, frankly, from YouTube, who, frankly, if YouTube and their algorithm wasn't censoring news they don't like, this video would have a lot more views. But do you know that YouTube is actually, their algorithm is making sure that videos, both on-demand videos and live stream, don't actually get delivered to the people who subscribe to channels? Do you know that? That's YouTube is doing that for their advertisers. This is becoming a banana republic. Actually, it is a banana republic. But it's an absolute and utter disgrace. And I'm going to stay on it. And you know what's really killing me right now? It's truly, I mean, it's not killing me. I'm here, I'm breathing. I've got Fiji water, so I'm doing okay. I am a little bougie about my water because all I do is cover contaminated water. What's bothering me the most is not only is corporate media letting this happen, but I feel like I can't really do much because I can't get there. I mean, this is what I got, folks. This is what I got. I'm keeping it real. Our reporting patron has been up, I believe, for 3 weeks, maybe a month. We got 212 patrons paid. Thank you so much to all of you. $1,100 ain't gonna get it done to get out in Flint and stay there as long as I need to. We need to jack that up big time. So everybody's support is really appreciated. If you can't support, if you're struggling to pay bills, just get these videos out. Press the share button. Tweet them. Facebook them. Send them out as a smoke signal. Do what you got to do. I want to get back in the field because we need to cover I mean, this is fascism. We need to put microphones and get microphones in the face of these public officials and make them answer. James Michael Sarvis says, Jimmy Dore should give you a boost. Very funny you say that, James, because I think, little teaser, I think Jimmy will be giving me a boost rather soon. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. I think my friend Jimmy Dore will be giving me a boost rather soon. So I patiently await that boost. Much love to you, Jimmy Dore. Moving on, and I will continue to cover Flint as much as I can. Moving on to a story that it started, I believe, last week, but I think is finally, shockingly, the record is getting straight from the New York Times, of all places. The New York Times, of all places. So Bernie Sanders, on the anniversary of, he went to Memphis, Tennessee, on the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination, and he made a comment about President Obama that the neoliberal establishment went bonkers about. Quote, the business model, if you like, of the Democratic Party for the last 15 years or so has been a failure, said Bernie. People sometimes don't see that because there was a charismatic individual named Barack Obama. He was obviously an extraordinary candidate, brilliant guy. But behind that reality over the last 10 years, Democrats have lost about 1,100 seats in state legislatures all across this country. Controversial, right? Controversial that on the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination, Bernie had the audacity to compliment the first African-American president as a very charismatic politician. I don't know what is controversial about that. He wasn't saying he was just a pretty face but unintelligent. He said nothing negative about, frankly, if it were me, that's why I should be a politician, because I'm not a graceful speaker. But if it were me, I wouldn't even give him the charisma. Yeah, he was charismatic, and he fooled a lot of people. So, I mean, the Neera Tanden crowd, the neoliberal Democratic hacks, I mean, they just went absolutely bonkers on Twitter. This New York Times piece says it best. Twitter erupted immediately, and critics like former South Carolina Representative Bakari Sellers, who's a CNN analyst, a neoliberal hack, accused Sanders of, quote, arrogance and of, quote, dismissing President Obama. I think Bakari Sellers actually said, put out a tweet this date that Bernie said that is officially the end of Bernie Sanders' revolution. I think he said something like that. But this reporter from the New York Times said, hey, I love to knock the New York Times, MSNBC, all of them. But if they do something well, I don't have a problem complimenting them. So this reporter traveled with Bernie, and she set the record straight. But Thursday's critiques were only loosely tethered to Wednesday's words on their face, which were fairly uncontroversial. Who could defend as successful the, quote, almost unprecedented loss of legislative seats over the last 10 years, or Hillary Clinton's defeat to game show host Donald Trump? In Mississippi, when Sanders called the Democratic Party a failure, the audience erupted into applause. And of course, President Obama was a uniquely charismatic and brilliant president. So, this New York Times reporter is speaking the truth. In fact, if Beale Street could talk, it would tell a very different story about Bernie Sanders than the now familiar critique that he is insufficiently sensitive to racial issues. As I walked with Sanders down Memphis's famous thoroughfare, his popularity, including among the predominantly black crowd attending the commemorative festivities, was self-evident. The senator was stopped every few feet by selfie seekers and admirers. Yes, perhaps this is to be expected of any politician with a national profile, but given his poor showing in Mississippi during the 2016 Democratic primary, in which he secured less than 17% of the black vote, I had thought the senator and his small cohort might go unnoticed. I was wrong. Oh, how refreshing to hear that from a corporate media journalist. Hey, you got to give credit where credit is due. You got to give credit where credit is due. That New York Times reporter, she got in the field. She was with Bernie. Bernie said what he said about Obama to most objective people who aren't deranged in the head or just part of the Democratic Party neoliberal consultant class. And everybody, make sure, each one of you, press this share button. Let's get this to more people. On the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King, Bernie Sanders complimented the first African-American president as being charismatic. He didn't say he was unintelligent. He didn't say he was lazy. He didn't say he got nothing done. He complimented him. But to Bakari Sellers and the Hillbots on Twitter, love calling them Hillbots, this proved that Bernie's a racist. None of them want to actually, I challenged one of them on Twitter last week. I said, okay, so the man who got arrested during the civil rights movement, the man who has actually lets black people talk. Do you remember when the Black Lives Matter people interrupted his rally and he gracefully stepped to the back and let them talk? As opposed to Hillary Clinton, who, when a Black Lives Matter person interrupted her wealthy donor private fundraiser, Hillary just said, oh, somebody get her, somebody throw her out. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. And, we're going to continue to see this. We're halfway to the midterms. The day after the midterms, it's already onward to 2020. I happen to believe Bernie will be running as long as his health is there. I believe he will be running. But there's this nonsense and these distortions that the neoliberal Democratic establishment is trying to push, that Bernie Sanders is somehow racially insensitive. Some of them just say he's straight up racist. Well, why is it, maybe they don't want to address that his policies would disproportionately help African Americans, would disproportionately help Latinos, would disproportionately help Native Americans. They'd help those groups a lot more than me. It's not that white people aren't struggling either, but historically, black people, brown people, Native Americans have struggled a lot more economically. So, Bernie Sanders, free healthcare, it's not free, we pay a little more in taxes, would help all these classes of people that they're trying to claim he's a racist against. Free public college tuition would help people, African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, that might need help to get an education. And by the way, there's a lot of well-educated African Americans and Latinos and Native Americans. So this is not a generalization, but these are the facts. Bernie Sanders would help all of these groups. His policies of actually taxing wealthy people more while giving tax cuts to working poor and middle-class people would not only help the working class and middle-class people, but they would actually help the wider economy. But no. Bakari Sellers says he's an extremist, he's a racist because he had the audacity to compliment the first African-American president. You can't make it up. And you know what? Remember this day, Thursday, April 12th. I want you to remember this day because I'm about to make a prediction, and I bet your bottom dollar it's going to happen. Speaking of dollars, just saying, if Bernie Sanders runs again for president, they will come after him and his wife for their honeymoon in Russia. They will start just asking. We're just asking questions. Who did he meet with during his honeymoon in Russia? Mark my words, folks. I know how the corporate media works. I used to work in the corporate media. I'm still recovering. I welcome the trolls, Laura. That's okay if we have trolls. I welcome them. They are going to go after Bernie. They are going to keep pushing this nonsense that Russian trolls was really the reason his movement was so large. Just like they say Russian trolls are behind the Standing Rock movement being so large and Black Lives Matter. Pretty soon they're going to say Russian trolls were behind the civil rights movement. Pretty soon they're going to say Russian trolls killed JFK, if that's even possible. This is going to happen, folks. Guaranteed. Can't make it up. And from a beloved figure who actually talks the talk, walks the walk, and means what he says, to I think the media is seeing the Donald Trump story in the wrong way. They're saying he's a Russian puppet and he's bought off by the Russians, whatever. I think the true story about Donald Trump is literally, not just in U.S. history, but possibly in world history, the most successful con man in world history. This man is the most successful con artist that we have ever seen. Are you ready for now what Donald Trump is for? Are you ready, folks? It's what I told you. I hate to say I told you so. And I challenged a lot of Trump supporters during the campaign. I get attacked that I elected Trump. Well, I guess you didn't see my videos getting into it with all his supporters at campaign rallies. Donald Trump has told his advisors, reopen negotiations for the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Trade Deal. Before I read on, is this the least shocking thing you've ever heard in your life? I'm not there anymore, but my former boss, who then fired me for false reasons, but anyway, he said that Trump was going to go back on the TPP. I give him credit. When I was in Ohio, when I was in Wisconsin, when I was in Michigan, when I was in Pennsylvania, when I was in a lot of these Rust Belt states, and I heard him ranting and raving, and oh my God, he had them at NAFTA. He had the Rust Belters at NAFTA. I'm repealing NAFTA. Day one, TPP, done. They bought it hook, line, and sinker. And I told these folks, I don't know about that. Donald Trump is a plutocrat. Donald Trump has benefited from NAFTA. But Donald Trump's business would benefit from the TPP. He's not president for you. He's president for him and his companies. So when all these people were saying it was Russia and WikiLeaks and all that won him the election, I pointed out, no, I was in Michigan and I was in all these Rust Belt states multiple times, and I saw at these rallies, he won those Rust Belt states on the anti-trade message. And less than 2 years into his presidency, he is now, quote unquote, renegotiating NAFTA, which sounds a lot to me like tinkering around the edges, changing a few sentences, and keeping NAFTA, which has hurt more people across the middle of the country and other parts of the country than any other trade deal I know of. And now the president who on day one got rid of the TPP, renegotiating the TPP. Here we go. President Donald Trump has directed his top trade and economic advisors to take a fresh look at the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement he withdrew from in his first week in office, Republican senators said Thursday. Quote, he said he's going to deputize National Economic Council Chairman Larry Kudlow and U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer to look at re-entering TPP negotiations. Quote, clearly it's a deliberate process. And the president is a guy who likes to entertain a lot of different ideas, said Ben Sasse, who's a senator, who has been critical of the administration's withdrawal from the trade deal and other protectionist moves. Quote, but he multiple times reaffirmed the point that TPP might be easier for us to join now once the TPP 11 is aligned and we might be the 12th party to those negotiations as opposed to the long process that it took to get to TPP. Sasse said Trump looked directly at Kudlow during the meeting and told him to, quote, get it done. The White House did not immediately respond to requests for comment, and some members of the administration appeared surprised by the news. So you're surprised that this man is a total fraud? You're surprised that this man who won the presidency by acting like a populist crusader for the Rust Belt, and that he was going to bring all their jobs back that were offshored to Mexico and China. This is surprising to you that he's now talking about getting back for the TPP? And you want to know something? His supporters who, they think he's doing a good job because immigration is down, and Trump did a very good job of making a lot of Americans think that it's the immigrants that stole your jobs when it's really the corporations who shipped your jobs offshore that took their jobs. But, his supporters, they see a little bit more money in their account because of his tax cuts, which were heavily tilted towards wealthy people and corporations. His supporters, majority of them, either won't know or won't care about this. Because, Trump and his administration will give a massive tax break to like Apple or some other series of factories, so that these factories or plants don't have to pay any taxes. And then he'll get a few more plants reopened and declare victory. And he'll throw the tax cuts and a couple plants opened in Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin, and say, hey, I kept my end of the deal. Even after he enters the United States back into another awful trade deal that's going to screw the same people he promised to bring their jobs back. And I don't cover Trump that much because I'm not telling you anything that all this other media who lives and dies and foams at the mouth all day about Trump. But I got to cover this because this is literally why he won. And he's moonwalking back on it faster than Michael Jackson in the 1980s. So that's our president. You want to call him an agent of Russia? I don't get how he is. I mean, we're about to bomb Syria again. We're arming the Ukrainian rebels who are attacking Russia. He just put more sanctions on Russian oligarchs directly linked to Vladimir Putin. So if he's a puppet for Putin, he ain't not a good puppet. But you know what he also is? He's the most successful con man in, I don't even think United States history. I think world history. This man, wow. Did he sell a bill of gold-plated goods to desperate people? And if he wasn't running against one of the most corrupt, soulless, fraudulent politicians in American history, in Hillary Clinton, I know I'm a sexist for saying that, for just following the record and reporting the truth. If he wasn't running against her, he would have lost to just about anyone. He was very lucky that he drew Hillary Clinton, even though it should have been Bernie Sanders. So, there you go. We're going to have the TPP again, guaranteed NAFTA ain't getting repealed. And we're probably going to be spending another, let's just conservatively we'll probably say it'll be $1 trillion before Trump's time in office is done. $1 trillion we spent on Syria. I mean, it's unbelievable. You can't make it up. You can't make it up. And I really encourage you to watch and listen. It's a podcast. The interview I did with she's Middle East-based journalist Rania Khalek. I did a podcast interview with her yesterday, and we put it up this morning. It's about a half hour. I learned a lot, and she really goes into depth on the false intelligence and reporting that's been going on chemical attacks in Syria, and more false intelligence and evidence that's going to launch us in quite possibly another war. So as Flint residents beg for water, as black people get murdered around the United States, as teachers have to strike all over the country because they're not getting paid a living wage, we're going to spend more money on Syria. Thank you, Boofy OG, for telling me that was an excellent interview. If you'd like more of that, or if you want to support journalism like that in the field, just saying, you could go as low as $1 a month, $2 a month, $5 a month. Your support helps. So I want to show you another thing that I noticed today, because I've been hearing this phrase a lot over the last couple weeks. I've been hearing this phrase a lot, and it's quite frankly driving me mad. So I'm going to play this for you. It's Delaware Senator Chris Coons questioning Mike Pompeo, who had his nomination hearing today for his Secretary of State nomination. Let's listen.
Let me just follow up, if I might, for a moment on a line of questioning two of my colleagues pursued. You are a magna cum laude graduate of Harvard Law School. I couldn't get into Harvard. I went to Yale Law School. And as such, I'd assume that you'd agree that rule of law is absolutely essential to the values that define our democracy. Is that correct?
Senator, I only spoke publicly 5 times as a CIA director. Each time I spoke publicly, I spoke to, and maybe there's an exception, but each time I spoke at some length about the importance of the rule of law at the CIA, how we were a creature of law, and how if we didn't do that, the fundamental failure that would lead to. I believed it as a CIA director. I believed it all my life, and I'll believe it as the Secretary of State if I'm confirmed as well, Senator.
Well, and I think you made a strong statement that if confirmed, it'd be the 7th time you'd raise your hand and swear an oath to the Constitution. So let me just go back to a line of questioning. President Trump described Special Counsel Mueller's investigation as an attack on what we all stand for, and he has repeatedly threatened to fire Robert Mueller. He's threatened the investigation. He's threatened the Attorney General in his tweets in ways I find troubling. Do you believe Special Counsel Mueller's investigation is an attack on our country and all we stand for?
Senator, I hope you'll take this the right way. As the director of the CIA, I've been involved in that investigation. I've worked with Senators Burr and Warner and with Congressmen on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. I have been a participant in Special Counsel Mueller's activity. I think anything I say with respect, I want to avoid that today. I apologize that I can't speak more fully to that, but I hope you'll respect the fact that everything that I was asked to do in my role as State Director related to any of these investigations I've done with as much thoroughness, as much depth, and as much alacrity as our organization could achieve.
Well, I'm convinced that if the president were to fire the special counsel or to interfere with this investigation by firing Rod Rosenstein with an intention to then interfere with and shut down this investigation, that it would put the rule of law genuinely at risk.
Oh, the rule of law, the rule of law. We are a nation of laws. Did you hear that? Did you hear the rule of law? And by the way, somebody asked me, no super chat, get verified? Yeah, we'd have a super chat if YouTube would monetize me. I have not been monetized or had the check mark to be monetized on YouTube, and I've now been back for over a month. You think if I was CNN, they'd monetize me real quick? I can't do a super chat because I'm not monetized. Jen, could you explain to the masses in the chat about all that? Thank you very much. But I find this very interesting. And I'm not attacking Chris Coons, the Delaware senator. I don't care about Chris Coons. He's just another neoliberal hack. But I keep hearing this phrase from politicians. Donald Trump is attacking the rule of law. In the morning when I wake up, I go to the bathroom and then I try to go back to bed. But as I'm trying to like go back to bed a little bit, I put on Morning Joe because I believe keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. And listening to Morning Joe in the morning kind of gives me a little bit more energy for the day. So I hear Joe Scarborough a lot talking about, that the rule of law is under attack. The rule of law is under attack. Well, first of all, I do think the president, Trump, does attack the rule of law because I don't think he really cares about the law. He actually thinks the attorney general works for him when, based on the law, the attorney general and the Department of Justice is supposed to be totally independent of the president. So yeah, I agree. Trump don't care about the rule of law and none of that stuff. But that's secondary. What is this nonsense that we have a rule of law in this country and this country is based on rule of law? No. We have 3 different legal systems in this country. We have a legal system for bankers, oil executives, pharmaceutical executives, and wealthy donors. So that's the first legal system. Their legal system is just don't get caught. Don't get caught. And if you get caught, we'll take care of you. As long as you keep the money coming, we'll take care of it. That's number one. That's the first legal system. The second legal system is for, I don't know, what's left of like middle-class white people. What's left of us. So, I, for example, I got pulled over once when I was a young kid. I ran a stop sign. I made up a real BS story of why I was in such a rush, and the cop didn't give me a ticket. It was in a Long Island suburban neighborhood. So there's rule of law for like middle-class white folk, And then there's the rule of law for poor people, black people, brown people, Native Americans. And that rule of law is we're going to just arrest you. We're going to attack you if you protest. Going to beat you up if you protest. And we're just going to stick charges on you even if you didn't even leave your room, even if you didn't even leave your freaking house. So I keep hearing these wealthy plutocrats like Joe Scarborough on television who make millions of dollars a year, or Senator Chris Coons. It's not just him. I mean, there's other politicians that talk like this. And they're so indignant about Donald Trump and the rule of law. Well, where was all this talk about the rule of law? The rule of law. When unarmed Native Americans and environmental activists were getting brutalized by publicly funded police officers in North Dakota for months. Where was all the talk about the rule of law then? Did you hear about the rule of law then? I didn't hear about the rule of law. Where is all the talk about the rule of law as police in this country just keep murdering black people, just claiming, I thought he was going for his gun. Oh, okay. That's fine. No problem. We're not gonna try you in a court of law. Where's the rule of law for them? Where's the rule of law for billionaires that defrauded American investors and citizens, so much so that the United States economy and the global economy crashed 10 years ago? Did I miss the rule of law for them? I don't recall our nation of laws holding those folks accountable, like Lloyd Blankfein and Jamie Dimon. Because I know you guys, your 401k was cut in half, your retirement, a lot of you lost your homes. Where's the rule of law for police officers in St. Louis who shoot unarmed black people? Or the rule of law for a police officer who was literally in a car chase with an unarmed black person and said he was recorded saying this during the chase, I'm going to kill this motherfucker, you watch. Then he killed him. wasn't indicted. Wasn't indicted. However, there were black people I spoke with when I was in jail overnight, when I worked at the Young Turks. There was black people then who told me they literally have been pulled over for a broken taillight, thrown in jail, had bail set at $20,000 to $25,000, and then they couldn't pay those bails because they're poor, and then they had to stay in jail for 6 months to a year to work off the bail. That's called modern-day slavery, folks. Cindy says, I don't get to retire. I'm still looking for work when most others would be able to retire. But you have to eat. That's right, Cindy. So, I think why I brought this up is I think this is all part of this mentality that the corporate media has put out there and that Democratic establishment hacks have put out there. And that's the mentality that everything was just dandy in America on January 19th, 2017. Everything was just dandy. It's January 20th, and all the time since then, where the rule of law is suddenly at great peril. And we have an authoritarian president. We do. We definitely do. But I say, why not be consistent? Why do none of these people care when the rule of law is trampled on almost every day at poor people and working poor people and the people struggling to stay in the middle class? I don't see that outrage and indignation. You want to know why? Because our corporate media is made up of a bunch of out-of-touch New York and DC coastal elitic jerk-offs who are wealthy beyond their years and who are so out of touch with what you actually go through that they can't see the forest from the trees, folks. Before I end, right now, as I report at 5:17 Eastern Time, we have not dropped missiles on Syria, but there is talk. I'm looking at CNN in front of me. I've seen elsewhere that could happen very soon. And like I said, definitely after I'm off, if you have time, definitely watch and listen to the podcast I did with Rania Khalek, a Middle East-based journalist who is an expert on Syria. I just find it kind of sickening that although we do care about the people in Syria, we do care about what happens to struggling people or poisoned people or slaughtered people around the world. I do care. But the fact that we are trying to create another war in Syria based on, there's no way of knowing at this point if Assad gassed his people, and maybe the answer, if he did, wouldn't be dropping missiles. Maybe the answer would be trying to gather a coalition of other countries to collectively take action. But it's kind of sickening that while we create another war abroad, that we continue the longest running war in, frankly, history. And that's the war against the poor, right here in the US. Because when the people of Flint have their water taken from them and it gets no coverage in our media, that is an act of aggression. That is an act of war. You are putting the lives of people who cannot fight for themselves, who do not have high-powered lobbyists, who do not have high-powered attorneys. You're putting those lives at jeopardy. I'm going to keep covering the real news. I'm going to keep covering real issues. I'm going to keep calling out the hypocrites. I wish I could get out of my apartment. I wish YouTube wasn't suppressing my content. I wish a lot of things. But I'm energized. I think we need to start this media revolution from the ground up. Like I said, if you got a couple bucks per month, there's the address. You could make a difference. If I get that funding up, I'm getting back on the road. It might not look polished. It might not look super professional, but you give me the funds, get on a flight, rent a car, probably stay at a crappy motel or hotel. I want to get back to Flint. I want to get back to the stories that matter, because we can't depend. I wouldn't even call it corporate media anymore. I'd call it public relations people pretending to be journalists. Make sure also to go to my website. That's jordanchariton.com. Enter your email so we can grow our email list. We want to be able, as we launch this media network, hopefully by this summer, as we launch the media network, we want to have as much direct contact with you as possible. We don't want to depend on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Enter your email. We will not flood you with daily emails. You'll get an occasional email from us alerting you to what's going on, what we're working on, all those things. How many more Patreons you need to get on the road? Got 200 right now. I think we need to get between 1,000 and 1,500 to have enough funds to get back on the road. So it's up to you, folks. Share this video. Be the change you want to see in the world. If you got $1 a month, if you got $2 a month, if you got $5 a month, I really, really appreciate it. Because I'm not like others who are asking you to financially support and I'm not actually providing what I tell you I'm going to provide. I will deliver. And I will hire other reporters, because it's going to take a lot more than just me, folks. There is an oligarchy in this country, and it's going to take real reporting, and hopefully that reporting inspires more activism. We need more activism. We need more citizens challenging the powerful. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.